Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hi, Kristina. Welcome to the Quest podcast.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you could make some time today to chat. I know my listeners are bored when I say this every time, but I'm on the precipice of 100 episodes, and I believe you are episode 96 or 97. So I'm really excited about these final 10. And I wanted to have you on. We've been chatting for a few months, and I realized that I really hadn't had anyone in nutrition on since the first season. And I was like, well, this is perfect. I'll have you come on. And then we sort of, our schedules weren't matching for a while, but we're finally here, and we're going to get into a deep dive on nutrition and things like that. And I want to just start by, if you don't mind, tell my listeners a little bit about what you do and your credentials.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Congratulations on nearly 100 episodes. That's very impressive. I'm Kristina Hirschfeld. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist with 15 years plus professional experience. I studied nutrition at San Francisco State University and went on to do my dietetic internship at UCSF Medical Center. I worked there combined for about 12 years in a clinical setting at hospital. And most recently, I transitioned into running my online private practice, and it's called the Wellco Studio.
That's great. That's great. I'm curious, what made you pursue this course of work? Why this?
You know, as long as I remember myself, I've always been fascinated by nutrition and wellness and exercise and just healthy living. Even when I was young, I just always would find some articles to read or magazines at that time. I'll cut things out and share with my friends. And I don't know, I just really liked it. I thought it was fascinating. I was curious about different diets and what they do and how they affect the body. And the fitness part of it was also very interesting to me. So I would say it was a little bit of a gradual landing, so to speak, in this career. I loved also the part I really like too is helping people to transform. I mean, that piece is a very interesting piece to me. It's like being the part of people's journey, people being part of people's struggles and helping them really get to the better side. It just brings me so much happiness and fulfillment. And that's kind of what I've been doing. And it's been combined with my studying probably like 20 years. And I still love doing it. And that's kind of my story.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. With your company, what's your day-to-day like? Do you have private clients, and what do you do with the clients? Like, what if I want to work with you, what will you do for me? Are we shopping for groceries? Are you telling me what's in things? Are you setting up a diet for me? Walk me through that.
That's a great question. So I work online with clients, and it's a virtual secured setting. So I provide comprehensive nutrition assessments. What I mean by that is I look at your whole life. I look at your story, what you do, how you live your life, what is your job like, what do you do for exercise or body movement, what's your stress level like, what do you eat? Obviously, that's the piece I'll be digging in deeply, but what's your sleeping pattern is like. These are all very important components of building robust health, because you can have only one piece. It's sort of I always think of it like a table that has legs, at least 3 legs, 4 legs, and they're all equally important. So if one is missing or 2 are missing, that's not really a solid table. So if you think about health, of course, nutrition plays a huge role. It's foundational, but other aspects like sleep and exercise and stress, these are all very, very important components of people's health, and it really affects how we eat and what we eat. So I provide a comprehensive assessment. So I ask those kind of questions, which is sometimes very rare when you see in our conventional medicine, so to speak. We don't really get a chance to ask that many questions like that because we just time limited. We have a lot of patients to see, and we just have to get to the most important pieces, of course. But I have a luxury to actually interview my clients and ask them more questions and to get a better picture so that I can help them the best way. And it's very surprising. Sometimes it's surprising for clients because they're like, why are you asking about my sleep? Well, because it's really important. If you think about when we have a poor night's sleep and then the next day we are grumpy, we are cranky, we might skip the exercise. We probably going to be reaching for a cup of coffee or maybe something sweet and something crunchy. That's probably not the best for our health. So it really affects your nutrition the next day. And if you do that chronically, if this is your chronic issue, then something needs to be addressed. So this is how I address not only nutrition, but all the other lifestyle pieces.
For sure. It seems the nutrition and fitness are very closely related. How do you're not really necessarily a specialist on fitness, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, but like, how do you address that with a client? Like, if I'm someone who just doesn't want to be active, you're going to maybe advise me nutritionally a certain way to go versus a person who's really, really active and may need more calories or better food. Can we talk about that for a moment and how those two are related and how you address those?
Of course, I am not I'm not a fitness expert, but what I mean by exercise is not necessarily a rigorous exercise. I am talking about just body movement. We are naturally made to move, humans. So not moving, it's not a natural state for us. So so unfortunately, we live in a society that does not promote a lot of movement. And most of our jobs are at desks, or if we go outside, it has to be very intentional.
Some
For majority of us, I'm not saying all people. So I think that my encouragement to our clients is like they need to build in some kind of movement, whether it's something that they can do while they're working at home, maybe a few stretches every hour, or maybe it's going for a 5-10 minute walk. Maybe it's parking the car further away from the grocery store and walking. Maybe it's taking stairs versus elevators. These are all small things that add up at the end of the day. And if they're already exercising and they're already having exercise routine, that's great. So I always look at like what is missing and then adding to that. So if they're already doing everything and exercise is the area that they are fine with, there is no reason to be addressing it per se, because maybe there are other areas of that needs to have more attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's great. That's great. I try to stay active. I do a lot of podcasts, which keep me not moving, but I always try to get my walk in, and I usually try to work out in the evening. But I have to admit, and my listeners know this, I'm not really a foodie because I don't have the time for it, right? I don't have the time for like a really nice dining experience because I do have a lot of companies do a lot of things. I'm what I call a gas and go guy. That's what I do. I don't necessarily pick like the worst food. I'm not like a McDonald's guy or fast food guy, but like I have to do foods that I can do quick. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I try to get as much nutrients in those foods as I can, but I feel like a lot of people are like that, or like me. Do you see that a lot?
Yes, it's very, very common because a lot of my clients come to me, they're like, I don't have time, or sometimes I don't want to cook. I don't have time to cook. I don't want to cook. I don't have desire to do that. Whatever that is, I think there is a way around it. And this is where I teach sort of like tricks. So how you can build a healthy plate without really putting too much effort into it. I want to say that you have to put some kind of effort. I mean, you can, unless you are willing to have some kind of food delivery service, which is possible for some people, or you already buy ready-made foods. But sometimes ready-made foods could be not as healthy because they are more processed, they have preservatives and such. But the simplest thing is to just really have three components to your plate. Is your vegetables, your protein, and some kind of a whole grain. And sometimes batch cooking really helps. Like if you have a crock pot or Instapot, and you can just make a bunch of rice. You don't have to make it. You just have to pour water and put the rice in, and it's ready. And you can store it in the refrigerator. And you have your, let's say, brown rice for a few days, or quinoa, or buckwheat, or whatever you like to eat. And then also pre-making chicken. You can even buy a rotisserie chicken that's ready to go. You don't even have to cook it. You can just bake the chicken. And I always have some kind of vegetables that are easy to chop or easy to throw together. So as long as it's convenient, it's easy, people tend to do it. If it's complicated, it requires I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen cooking any kind of fancy meals as well. I have 5-10 minute meals that I put together because I have kids, I have work, and I don't always feel like doing it too. So even though I love it, it's not something I want to be doing all the time. So making things convenient and quick would make you stick to the plan long term.
Sure. What do you think, what you've maybe observed here, what do you think the most harmful foods are people are eating?
It's just the processed foods. Processed foods is the one that basically is causing a lot of our issues in this country and quite frankly in the world now. Anything that is packaged. There is a difference between ultra processed food and just processed food. For example, what I mean by that, you have ultra processed food. It would be your, without really naming any products, but your maybe a Snicker bar or M&M or some kind of Cheeto chips or Cheetos or some other chips. These are basically food-like substances. It's not really a food. It's not a food, and it has no nourishments, and that humans would benefit from. I lost my train of thought for a second.
No, let me jump in. Let me jump in for a moment. I had someone tell me once that when corn is stored in silos, that the corn in the very bottom becomes crushed, almost like a powder, and everything in that silo is sold. So all the corn that's been aging is sold, and that powder is also sold, and that powder is actually turned into certain types of chips. And this powder, like the mice and the rats don't even eat it, but that's the kind of stuff that is in our food. Not to mention the dyes that are in things. I think we all hear about red vines, and you're in California, Skittles were just no more. There's no more added Fruit Loops and all of these things that are hazardous. So if it's not just chemicals that are put into things, or the processed foods, or the high fructose corn syrup, I mean, all this stuff is out there every day for people. People are getting sodas every day, and I think we're putting this junk in our body. But where I wanted to go with this maybe was, I'm always bothered by the paywall for better stuff, and to get the better food, you have to pay more. And in a country where inflation is high and it's already hard enough to buy eggs, how do you buy better food? Do you have any tips for how people can buy better stuff without it really breaking their budget? Or are we just forced to have to get the processed stuff?
Here's the thing. Processed food is meant to be addicting. So when we eat processed food, we tend to want to eat more. And that's already been proven. So we just want to eat because most of the foods normally they're going to be high in sugar, high in salt, or high in unhealthy fats. So the body is not satisfied. So it's almost like wants more and more and more. You're constantly craving. When you eat real food, whole food, like eggs, chicken, um, whole grain, oatmeal, I don't know, rice and fruits, vegetables, you feel satisfied. So actually, in reality, you spend probably less money on food because you're staying satisfied a lot longer. For example, I can bring you the example because I do hear that a lot from my clients. It's expensive to eat whole foods. And I'll argue that. So if I go to Whole Foods, the rotisserie chicken, the whole rotisserie organic chicken is about $12, $12.99 or something like that. A bag of chips is about between $8 to $10 at Whole Foods. So if I ask you, what would keep you satisfied and what is best value for your dollar? Is it a bag of chips, or the whole chicken? You can feed the whole family with one chicken and probably still have a leftover for the next day. So the other thing is what people can cut or save some money is buying fruits and vegetables that are in season, because normally those fruits and vegetables are better priced. And these are some definitely tips. Is just eating whole foods because we're gonna stay satisfied. Eating enough protein. A lot of people eat a lot of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, or that turn eventually into glucose, they send you on a roller coaster ride for the day. So you constantly want to eat and munch and eat more. If you have enough protein, especially the first thing in the morning and throughout the day, but especially in the morning, you really set yourself for success for the rest of the day. So I can't emphasize enough is eating enough protein in each meal. It will really help you to eat less overall, to feel better, to feel more stable. And you will, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, will spend less money on food.
How many grams of protein does the average adult need in a day? Is it like 30 grams or?
It depends on the body. So we can start with 0.8, or something. You can say start with 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. But it depends on what your lifestyle is like. It depends on your clinical. If there's any organs that are compromised, you might have to adjust for that. Or if you are doing extra workout and you want to build muscles or what have you, then all children, it's all. But this is kind of like a starting point, about 1 gram per kilogram.
I often, when I monitor what I'm eating during the day, I don't think I'm coming close to what I need for protein. I feel like a lot of people are like that they don't eat things with enough protein and they're getting maybe a third of what they really require.
I agree. And I find that also true in my practice. And when people start eating more protein, they start getting better results with weight loss, with mood stability, and just feeling less affected by food. They don't think about food throughout the day. They just sort of like focus on other things because they're satisfied.
You mentioned, kind of the cost in that bag of chips versus the rotisserie chicken. When I eat that bag of chips, when you said you'll never feel satisfied, you'll never feel full. Is that where the term empty calories comes from? I've always been curious what that meant. Is an empty calorie like a calorie from a Dorito where you're just eating stuff and getting no nutrients? Is that what it is, or does it mean something else?
Yeah, the empty calories just means like you get calories with no nutrient value. So it's just calories that you really don't need extra, but you're not really getting anything out of it. So besides just calories.
Gotcha.
And that's, yeah.
Let's talk about cooking for a moment. See, I was surprised that you mentioned that you don't actually do big meals, because I thought maybe you would be like, trained in just really cooking food as someone who's into nutrition and like really maybe enjoyed that. But I get it, right? You're busy, you have kids, all of this stuff. You gotta move quick. But in terms of cooking, someone told me that, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, someone told me that microwaving food is actually one of the best ways to cook food, because all you're doing is really moving the atomic structure of it around and heating it up, and it's not cooking out anything versus boiling things or cooking things in other processes where you might lose some of the nutrients from liquids or steams. Is there any truth to that? And what can you tell me about cooking? What are the best ways to cook?
I don't really I don't own microwave. I don't microwave food. It's not ideal way of cooking. The best way to cook food is you can do like low heat cooking, preferably not frying. Baking is good. These are my go-to methods of cooking for sure. I love roasting. Roasting is, I call it cheating on like cutting corners and making a healthy meal without spending too much time. Is that I love to put a bunch of vegetables on the pan and just send it into the oven and just let it roast. I don't have to do anything for like an hour. And then I take it out. I can feed my family, and I still have leftovers for the next day. So I do the batch cooking, just roast a bunch of vegetables, and I always have them handy in the fridge. So roasting is a good one too. And
grilling, where does grilling fall?
Grilling is good. I mean, sometimes people grill too much. I think there is some, I've read some concerns with the grilling just because it's fine as long as it's not done on daily basis.
Sure. Yeah. I want to talk about this. I don't know, if you or I really know much about this, but I want to maybe just have a discussion about it. Kind of this Ozempic movement that's everywhere. Everyone's getting a prescription for this now. Everyone. Yeah. I think all of the surgeons that were stapling stomachs and all of that controversial stuff for so long, these guys are out of business now because Ozempic is like the miracle drug that makes people drop weight. I'm curious, I know people that are on it, and it's just, they have no appetite, right? So they're losing weight because they have no appetite. Their body's eating itself. I can't help but wonder how their bodies are being affected by the lack of nutrients that they were getting. We maybe talk about that a little bit?
The controversial question, but sure, I'll go into that. So what I think about Ozempic, from what I've been reading, and I think this is a kind of a evolving topic. So we finding out more as we use it more on people, and it's still a relatively new drug, so we don't know the long-term effects of it. So and the dosing and such. So what I've read and understand is it does a lot of good things for your metabolism. So for people who have struggled with weight and tried all kinds of lifestyle modifications and it really didn't work for them, I consider that as a good add-on pharmaceutical intervention that can help people to get them out of the state they're in. If you have, extra 100, 200 pounds, it's really hard to sometimes exercise. Your knees might be hurting. You might be out of breath because it's really hard. And you're not motivated maybe to do things in terms of nutritional changes, and giving people opportunity to jumpstart or see some kind of results fairly quickly. It really builds their confidence and helps them to get on track and start doing things. I think in that regard, and it's definitely effective, it's definitely working. People are losing weight and getting their weight goals in place. But having said that, I think that we are a little bit too quick to jump into this kind of interventions without really trying other methods. Because with any drug, it has side effects, and we don't know what the long-term side effects of that.
Yeah.
And so I think that just really saying like, okay, here's your quick fix without really trying educate clients, patients on what is like to, what do you do once you're off the drug? Like, do you have good plan for that? Are you able to, are you changing your lifestyle so when you're off the drug, you are not going to regain that weight back?
Right.
And so I think that's something that is really important to address at the same time. The other thing is people lose a lot of muscles on that drug, and muscle, having muscles, enough muscle mass is extremely important, especially as we get older after the age of 35 or 40. We gradually, naturally actually lose muscle mass, but if we are having the drug that accelerates the process, it's not a good thing, because we do want to have muscle mass, because that's our metabolically active tissue. We want to preserve it. That's why people work out, so they can keep as much muscles as they can. So Ozempic really kind of pushes in there. From what I'm understanding, it's not necessarily it targets muscle tissues. It's just when people eat very little, they're going to be losing fat and they're going to be losing muscles. Yeah. So, making a priority to eat muscles and that protein is really important. I think that's where it's important to talk about those things with the clients and really come up with a plan versus just prescribing it without really explaining what some side effects could be and how it can negatively impact them in the future.
Sure. There's also, the underground market for this is kind of weird and crazy, because people are getting these prescriptions from essentially pill mills, doctors that just write scripts anyways. And there are people that are just, 20, 30 pounds overweight that are getting this, that could have been a manageable weight loss by working out, versus the morbidly obese person who probably really needs it. And it's becoming a fad thing. Now I'm 54 years old. So I remember a lot of different times where Fin was popular. I remember when everyone was on that. You might recall hearing of that in the early 90s, and everyone was on the pills that would drop weight rapidly. And of course, those were incredibly dangerous and getting people's heart rates up. People were having all types of heart-related events because of it. And eventually that was outlawed. So we've seen these fads happen before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, people take the quick way out on all of the stuff. They don't want to work out. They don't want to take the time. It's just give me the magic pill that will do what I need.
I feel that's true. It's the quick fix. It's the culture we live in. We live in a quick fix culture. We want something right now. We don't want to work towards it. And I'm not saying that it does it. I'm not saying that people don't work to lose weight or to stay healthy or to be healthier. They do, but what we see is it's kind of widely used now, even for people who just want to lose 5 extra pounds. So that's not really a reason to get you started on Ozempic. So, but there are people out there who actually would benefit from it.
I see people who keep their same terrible diet while on the shot.
Yeah, exactly.
They continue to eat the sugar and all the stuff that they shouldn't eat. Let's back up a little bit. Tell me a little bit about young Kristina. Where'd you grow up? What was your early life like? Do you have a big family?
Yeah, so I grew up in Abkhazia. I don't know if you know about this beautiful region, and it's a South Caucasus, and it's northeastish side of the Black Sea. It's it used to be Autonomic Republic of Georgia, and Georgia was part of the former USSR. So it's this beautiful little region, a resort town, Sukhum, that I grew up with. And in 1992, we had a war between Georgia and Abkhazia, and that's where unfortunately, we had to leave our beautiful country, and we went to Moscow. I lived there for several years, started my university, studied business at that time. And then I took I took a semester off and actually went and stayed with my family in New Zealand, who immigrated to New Zealand at that time. So stayed with my grandparents and my uncle, aunt, and cousins.
Another beautiful place.
Yeah, so I kind of moved around quite a bit, and then eventually in 2000, I met my husband, and we've been together for 24 years now. And I moved to the United States. That's how I ended up here. But I spent my first 20 years of my life between three countries: Abkhazia, Moscow, Russia, and then New Zealand. Lived there for 3 years.
Do you have a big family? Do you have a lot of brothers and sisters?
I have one sister. She's 7.5 years younger than me, but I do have a lot of family members, and many of them live in New Zealand, in Australia, but mostly in Abkhazia and some in Moscow. And quite a bit of my family members live also in Moscow. They stayed there.
Sure.
So I do have a lot of family members everywhere, and I love them all. We are very close. They're amazing, and I miss them. I miss not having them here, for sure.
Well, it's a good excuse to visit Australia and New Zealand, though.
Yes, that is correct. Beautiful country.
Did you grow up spiritual or religious? I always try to ask this of my guests. Is that important to you?
My father always, talked about spirituality and religion actually with us growing up. We were not. We were Christians, Russian Orthodox, but we were not, I would say, practicing as much as maybe other families were. But we always, we grew up knowing and learning and always believing there is something bigger and better than us here.
Yeah. Well, now you've been in the U.S. probably a majority of your life at this point, right?
Yes, correct.
What a crazy last 10 years it's been, just like I think politically and environmentally in the world, yes, and especially in this country. And you're in California now, right? Aren't you up near like San Francisco
area? Mm-hmm.
What I like to call the state of Northern California.
Yes.
I lived in Southern California for a while, and there was always like this interesting rivalry about the north and the south of the state.
Yes.
And it's such an odd state. People, I think, I love California, but I think people, they don't understand how hard it is to govern a state like California. And I think the issue is like this, and I could be off base on this, but I try to always kind of correlate to this. Like you see Texas as a well-run state in the South, right? And it's a large state, mm-hmm, but there's no other state like California in terms of just sort of the geography of it, north-south. And it's almost like it never should have been made that way. It should have been like three separate states because of just environmentally how different all of those sections are. So I think it's always going to be a difficult state to manage. And, I think you hear things like California is always first when it comes to, environmental protections that they try to enforce, and electric vehicles and pollution standards. They've been always ahead of the curve on that, but one of the largest homeless problems in the entire country. And of course, the highest prices for almost everything in the entire country. You're there, San Francisco in particular is there with Denver and Chicago and New York in terms of how expensive things are. And New York, which is where I'm at now, is actually cheaper than those cities. Like I couldn't believe how much more things cost when I was in Denver earlier in the year. I was like, holy moly, this is Denver? Really? Like this stuff is so much more expensive. How do you feel about your state? Do you like the direction that your state goes, living in it for so long now? Or do you feel, your future might lie outside of California at some point? Could you see yourself living in another part of the country?
I definitely have noticed a big change since I've been here. And I'm trying to be very objective. I'm not extreme one way or another. I've lived in different places. I've traveled. And I always try to be objective, but I have noticed a lot of less favorable changes in California over the last 10 years. Definitely, the homelessness is just becomes kind of dangerous, and then you go to the city. I used to love to take kids to the city to explore. It's a beautiful city, to do things, to go to maybe performances or a sports game or such, where now I prefer not to do that. Last time we went, I took my son. I love to take them to, especially my oldest son, I love to take him to theaters or musicals. So we went to see Tina Turner Broadway performance here in San Francisco, and I went there with my mom and my son, and we got out. I think the show was over. I don't remember, maybe like at 9 p.m. And we were parked in a secured parking lot, but we had people following us in a parking garage and making the two guys making a scene. And it was scary. My son was scared. He's like, "Mom, I want to leave." And I don't think that's kind of ideal place to take kids or to be. And there's a lot of incidents where people get hurt. So that part is definitely very upsetting. I wish it wasn't like that. In terms of what you think of me living outside of California, I never say no to anything. I think that I think being flexible in life is really good. And if opportunity comes, and if my family decides to explore something else, whether it's temporarily or permanently, I'm open to that. So, but so far, we're happy here.
You mentioned, you grew up in kind of a resort town, and then you were in New Zealand, which is just incredible countryside, and now, a big progressive city like San Francisco in that area. So you've definitely experienced a lot. Do you find yourself favoring the country or the city more?
Oh, that's a good one. I try not to, maybe it's just my way of living. I try not to be attached to anything, because I feel like when we get attached to anything, we become disappointed. So I think like really being open and flexible is a good way to live. And because things change, I mean, the cities change, people change, circumstances change. We change, I changed. So maybe obviously I wasn't, I didn't have the same thoughts and values 20 years ago when I moved here. So I know we change as we become parents. That changes a lot of things, how we view the world and what's important to us. So yeah, I think that being flexible is good.
That's good. I like to hear that. My last question for you here today is, what's your day-to-day health and wellness routine? What do you do? How does it start in the morning? How does it end at night?
Oh yeah. So I have pretty standard routine, I have to say. I get up in the morning, I get myself ready. I always start with myself. I get myself ready, and I always make my bed. I don't leave the room unless my room is perfectly tightened up. And then I go downstairs. I start preparing breakfast for my kids. I have two sons, and wake them up and we'll take them to school. Then I come back and touch things up around the house, and then I go on my walk.
What's breakfast?
Breakfast, normally it's a protein, either eggs or they love eggs. So like we do a lot of eggs, or we do some, I can think of right now, oatmeal with, I sometimes mix eggs with oatmeal. It's a secret that I do to add more protein to oatmeal. Sometimes it's just a leftover from the day before. It could be a toast with some kind of a nut butter for kids, and some fruit, always some kind of vegetable, whether it's a tomato, avocado. Avocado is a fruit, but kind of counts as a vegetable. Sure. So any kind of a vegetable or fruit, normally with breakfast, and then I pack them lunch, and then I take them to school, and then I go on my walk, then I come back and I start working, and I work until they are, I need to pick them up. And then after that, it's kids' activities. They have a lot of sports, so music they're involved in, or dance. And then after that, dinner time. And I normally always make some meals. And as I said, it's not complicated. I don't make things complicated, but it is always homemade. And then Friday, I call the chef's night off. Fridays, we do takeout. So I don't cook on Fridays.
Sure.
And weekends are kind of a little bit more loose. Yeah. So Friday, normally Sunday, we do some kind of a barbecue at home. Normally my husband kind of does that. Weekends, I also take a little bit of break from cooking.
And let me ask you, I just have a few more questions with this. Fish, chicken, meat, they can all be on the plate, or is there anything that you don't like?
What is it again?
Like, is it fish, chicken, meat? You'll do all those, or are you not a meat eating family, or what's your stance on that?
We eat everything. I believe in eating everything in moderation is the way to go. I don't like excluding groups and vetoing some things unless you have a reason for that.
Pork's okay.
Pork's probably less so, but we do chicken, turkey, we do fish, and we do red meat too, which is just normally I buy grass-fed, grass-finished red meat, so it doesn't have any things that I don't want in my meat. But
Sure.
I do less often, but it's important to get it's a nutrient dense meat, especially good for growing children. So I do that. And the portion is the key. So you don't need to overdo on it, but it's good to include it. So
Sure.
eggs are good ones too.
What's your guilty pleasure food? What do you do you eat cake, pie? Like, do you have an occasional ice cream? Tell the truth.
I am not perfect. My guilty pleasure food is French fries. I love French fries. Like, I don't care about cakes and pies and sweets. Like, I can live without it. But I do like French fries, and I do allow myself to eat it because I don't eat obviously all the time, but I do like once a month or maybe sometimes twice a month. We have really great drive-through Amy's, and they do have the best French fries. So I do allow myself because living in deprivation, I don't believe in living in deprivation. I think we all have to have a room for things that I call it a food for soul. So we have food for our health, and then we have a food for soul. So if you identify foods that you like, as long as you keep it in moderation, and sometimes it's good for our soul. So French fries is my food.
That's good. That's good. See, it makes you human to the audience that you admitted that, because too many people would be like, I eat strict all the time. Yeah, we don't believe that.
No.
You mentioned food for the soul. I ask this question a lot to my guests. You've heard the term mind, body, soul, right?
Yes.
And I think it just rolls off the tongue that way, mind, body, soul. But if you were to put it in order, what would come first, second, and third?
I think in our culture, we definitely spend a lot of time talking about body, right? So the body is important. We take care of our body, we exercise, we deal with our body. It's a physical thing that we see, and but I think everything starts with our mind. If we have a right mindset, if we have the right outlook on life, I think that it really affects how we take care of our body. And then for the soul part, I would say if we would align our life with what our soul really desires or meant to do, and gifts and talents that we have to share with the world, I think that making everyday choices become a lot easier. What I mean by that, if you value, and it's you crave healthy lifestyle, you crave family, and maybe peaceful life, and if you're not living by those principles, it becomes very difficult. It creates a lot of distress inside us, and stress actually can affect our body in a negative way. So I really think that really aligning ourselves with what our soul wants, and it's different for everybody, that really helps us to get our mind straight, and then our actions will follow.
I love that. That's a beautiful answer. Well, Kristina, I really appreciate you coming out and doing this today. How can people find you out there on social media and the interwebs?
So I recently launched my website. Really excited about that. It's www.metacortex wellcostudio.com, so people can learn more about my services, read about my story, my journey, and my offerings. And then I'm also on Instagram under Kristina with K _dietitian. So they can get social with me there too.
Great. Well, I appreciate you coming out. I hope you do it again.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And we'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Thanks, Todd.
Metacortex Publishing hopes that you've enjoyed this presentation.
Please take a moment to listen to some other podcast offerings from Metacortex Publishing.
The Danceology podcast interviews the great masters of dance, the working professionals starring in today's most exciting shows, and the rising stars ready to amp up the craft. I'm your host, Edyta Stawenska from Dancing with the Stars. Join me as I dive into the world of dance, uncovering unique stories and the fascinating personalities of industry professionals on Danceology.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
The No Earthly Explanation podcast investigates the things that are unexplainable, hosted by world-renowned investigative researcher Donald R. Schmidt and scientist Ellie Ringo. Follow them as they look for evidence for things that have no earthly explanation. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Every year, tennis players from around the world compete for excellence, triumphing against all odds to emerge the champions. I'm your host, Maddie Harrison. Join me as I get up close and personal with these dynamic individuals and find out what it takes to go for greatness. Let's go beyond the match.
Cult Following is a podcast that studies the personalities and common traits of cult leaders and their followers. Get the real story behind these infamous and oftentimes tragic cults from a new perspective, through exhaustive research, and from interviews with people that were there. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hi everybody, I'm Amber Rose, the religious hippie, and I host the podcast A Catholic's Perspective. Join me every 2 weeks as I release episodes targeted towards helping young Catholics navigate their ever-changing secular world while staying strong in their faith. Whether you are a Catholic or not, all are welcome here. So if this is something that interests you, feel free to tune in. You can find A Catholic's Perspective on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I hope to see you there. Bye!
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fischer and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure to visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.